Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us for the Responsible Cafes Stronger Together Summit. My name is Jo Horsley and I am the General Manager of Responsible Cafes and one of the original volunteers who got the movement started. So I'm really happy to still be around and bringing this event to you today. But before we start, I'd like to just play a pre-recorded acknowledgement of country from the lovely Stephen Thorpe, a Gunai and Gujamara man living in Naarm, Melbourne, and a mentor of student chefs at Charcoal Lane, one of Australia's leading Indigenous restaurants. So here we go.
Hello to everybody at the Stronger Together Cafe Summit. My name is Stephen Thorpe and I'm a proud Gunai and Gundi Jamara man. I'm here to share with you the acknowledgement of land that we are all meeting upon today. So I'm sitting here on the Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. And I'd like to pay my respects to all the elders that have passed and present, and those leaders that are emerging into elders of the future. I'd like us all to take a moment to reflect on our connection to the land and realize that our very bodies come from the land. The food that we eat comes from the land. This is a very important understanding that our bodies are 70% water. I want you to take that acknowledgement and that understanding and awareness into your daily activities. When you're doing this summit together, Stronger Together, you're walking on that land. You remember that we are the land. This is the essence of Aboriginal culture. And I'd love to wish you a fantastic summit where you're doing very, very valuable work. As a chef from Charcoal Lane Restaurant, I'd like to commend you on that work to be a more responsible hospitality industry and cafes. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic day.
So what are we doing here today? Well, since its humble beginnings in 2013, where we had just a few cafes committed to reuse, we now have a massive 5,000 cafes across Australia who are actively working to reduce their waste. The goal of this event is to bring together that community to really help drive even further impact. Working alone as a small business, you might wonder what difference you can make. But working as a network of 5,000 businesses, I know that we have the power to make transformational, positive change in the hospitality industry. I'll just give you a quick example. If all our cafes encouraged an extra 10 people to use a reusable cup, that would amount to 18.25 million plastic lids and paper cups per year. Just think of the financial cost savings, not to mention the reductions of trees being cut, carbon being released into the atmosphere, plastic ending up in landfill and on our streets, and worse still, in our beautiful waterways affecting our lovely fishies. Look, we understand that cafes have been hit really hard by the current pandemic, and many have been challenged to find ways to reduce their waste as they've pivoted to takeaway. So during this summit, we're going to speak to some incredible cafes and innovative thought leaders who have managed to not only hold on financially, but also hold on to their values as they navigate through these really, really difficult times. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our incredible partners, Planet Ecologica, I Am Not Paper, Husky Cup, the Alternative Dairy Company, The Bravery, Cafe Culture Magazine, BizSafe, Free Tub, and all our committed council partners for their contribution in making this event happen. Woo! Thank you. I would also like to thank our amazing cafes and thought leaders who are taking part in this event and sharing their incredible passion and stories with us. So I hope you enjoy what we've prepared for you. Thanks.
Hey. So now it's my turn. Hello, my name's Jane Stewart and I'm from BizSafe. And I've been working with Jo to develop this event today. Today's theme is all about reimagining the future of responsible cafes. And we've gathered together some really interesting cafe leaders and experts to share their stories and their experience. We'll start by speaking with someone from the United Nations to give us a global perspective on some really key cafe issues. Then we'll talk to an expert, a coffee expert, who'll give us some key industry trends that are coming up. We'll hear from a cafe owner and listen to her COVID story and how she created a whole new business approach during the time. And then we'll listen to one of our own responsible cafe ambassadors who will discuss the concept of moral courage and how this relates to running a cafe. Then we'll bring the whole team together and we'll have a deeper discussion around our theme, which is reimagining the future of responsible cafes. So I hope you enjoyed the session and let's get started. So our first speaker is Janet Salem. Janet is the Economic Affairs Officer at the Circular Economy, Sustainable Urban Development section of the United Nations here in Asia Pacific region. Janet has been working with the United Nations for the last 15 years on environmental sustainability, and she focuses on circular economy and low carbon lifestyles. Janet has also worked extensively on sustainable food systems and campaigns on food waste prevention. So she's a perfect person to start today to talk to about global issues that affect the cafe industry. So we're really excited to have you with us, Janet. I was thinking perhaps the first thing you could do is tell us, what are you working on at the UN at the moment?
Oh, well, a lot of things. At the moment, hot topic is plastics. So working with cities in Southeast Asia on reducing the use of single-use plastic, and also if they have to be used, looking at how to invest in the right waste management systems so they don't become ocean plastic. And cafes are a big part of that. So it's really great to be here, not only to sort of share what we're doing, what we're thinking, but also hopefully to get some feedback from cafes on what we can do to help.
So what sort of things, when you say that, what does the UN actually do in this role? I mean, tell us about that. Tell us about single-use plastics.
Well, it sort of starts with a bigger picture, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. The UN's a really big entity, and we're just there really to help countries or member states with how they reach Sustainable Development Goals. What's relevant to cafes, I guess, in terms of plastic, is we really want to shift towards systems that are sustainably use natural resources. So this sort of linear idea of take, make, waste that single-use plastics is from would be contrary, or would be something we'd want to help countries move away from. But there's also a lot of goals dedicated to food. Food comes up in a lot of different ways. So not only health and access to food, but sustainable food systems, sustainable food consumption, and reduction of food waste. So it's once we had that framework in place in 2015, that meant that each country could develop its own plan to achieve those goals. So all countries, including Australia, have a plan towards achieving food sustainability, or even reduction of waste. And it helps us work with those countries, but also helps us and other partners collaborate, because we have the common framework, the common understanding and common terminology about what we all want to achieve.
So around that common framework, what are some of the actions that you're doing or encouraging? Like, there's frameworks and there's sort of systems of thinking, but what about the action on the ground? How does the UN sort of encourage and work with people on the ground to do that?
Well, lots of different ways. Some of the ways I've worked on it is, my focus is Asia Pacific. And what I've seen is that even if you want to live a sustainable lifestyle, let's say you're coming up to a cafe and you've got some green values, it's often quite difficult to make those choices if you don't have the right options in the market. So I've been running a startup competition for startups that are able to provide low waste or low carbon solutions that are consumer facing. And so what we do is we help those startups with a small grant. It's never enough, but it is a grant. Some business partnerships so they can get some good technical and business know-how, some comms help. But then in return, what we're looking for them is policy advice. You know, what would you like us to tell policymakers as part of our advocacy on how we can make the system work better for you as a sustainable product provider? So there might be some, you know, when it comes to circular economy, there is a large overhead on that with the reuse and logistics, materials, etc. Especially when single-use plastics are so cheap, but waste management is still expensive. So they do have a cost, but the cost is sort of displaced in the system. Or like more recently, you know, concerns about hygiene around the pandemic has really gotten in the way of some startups that are providing on the reuse side. And on the food side, so that's been very interesting. We've got a lot of insights from startups, not as many from cafes. So that's why I'm really happy to be here. And on the food side, we've been looking at creating sustainable culinary journeys in conferences and large events. So what we noticed was, we run a lot of conferences, and you sort of have that buffet where you sort of walk down the buffet and put a bit of everything in. So instead of that, we work with hotels and large venues to create a journey through different stations, whether it's the responsible seafood or the plant-based food, or the menu that's using kitchen waste creatively, or certified sustainably raised livestock, etc. So looking at using food and menus as a way of telling a story about sustainability and sustainable development goals.
It's interesting. I suppose when we hear that you're from the UN, it sounds very lofty and it sounds global and removed from a cafe here in Australia. How can a cafe here in Australia get more connected to these, this framework, the sustainable development goals, and make it sort of real to them in their day-to-day operation of their cafe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the UN is such a big organization, and sometimes think it's a very powerful organization and yet very powerless, because we don't physically control the way things are done, whereas a cafe owner does control their world. So we want to hear, ideally, if the sector can come together and sort of pre-competitively or just collaboratively develop some policy briefs, so that well-meaning people, working in environmental policy or health policy, can understand how they can design solutions to make things better. We've got a few fabulous startups, or not sure if they're startups any longer, or very well-established businesses, but there's also systems that are helping startups to grow, to incubate, to accelerate, and the people running those programs, it would also be great if you could communicate with them either through the Responsible Cafes Summit or network, to say, look, here's one of the problems. I was learning from Joe the other week that a little struggle with reusable, bringing your own cup, is that the barista wants to write what your order is on the cup, and they can't really do it if it's your cup and not disposable. So it's just understanding little things like that we wouldn't have thought of as being critical to cafes, can be super helpful in designing solutions so that they can actually scale and take off.
Okay, that's interesting. There's no doubt through this summit series, not just today, but these other summit series coming up, we're really going to collect some ideas and innovations around cafes. So we can certainly collect it all and send it up back to you if that's the sort of thing you're after, are you?
Yes, and I particularly want to know, from cafes that is fully on board, like I'm very much looking forward to hearing from Hannah afterwards, but from cafes that are on board, as well as cafes that are sort of, interested, but they're sort of worried about money or logistics or whatever. We really want to hear the why not. Why wouldn't you pursue circular economy or a sustainable menu? Just not so that we can debate it, but so that we can understand what those problems are, what those barriers are to you, and again, find solutions and work with you to support you in a way that actually makes sense.
I suppose what would be fantastic is if we did start this dialogue between Responsible Cafe Network and you, is to somehow show people giving feedback that you were listening and taking it on board. I don't know, how could we do that? How could we show that this was happening, that we were actually putting, as a group, we were coming together and we were putting forward some ideas and you were taking them on board?
Yeah,
how could we do that?
Absolutely. I think if maybe in the final session of this summit, where we're really hearing from cafes, what would be useful is to note down, what are the barriers to being a responsible cafe, in a way that can help a policymaker, probably at a city and state level, understand when they do develop those bans on single-use plastic or other relevant policies, what other things could help be embedded in that? Is it a subsidy or a levy, or is there better guidelines or training or a phased approach? So such a policy brief would be really useful. And then we also, at the UN, we have a global sustainable food systems program that's doing a lot of consultations. Anyone can host an event. So this is also something where if cafes in Australia wanted to get together or wherever, and look at the framework that the UN is working on and sort of go through and say, yeah, that makes sense. This one doesn't make sense. Or can we ask that there'd be some more support in this form or that one. That's super useful because the consultation and stakeholder engagement, we call, it's quite heavy to do top down, but bottom up, it's always very welcome. So yeah, anything that we could hold an event together to sort of consolidate some of this feedback under the UN framework on sustainable food systems, which includes the consumption and retail of food, that would be super handy.
Okay, all right. I suppose we'll keep that in mind as we're running these different summits, because we would love to have some, continue the association with you so that you can put it out there and feed it up into the frameworks and the systems. Is there any last word you want to say here, Janet, to the crew, to the responsible cafes? Any last tips or thoughts that you would like to put to them?
Yeah, just if you really need to stick with a disposable cup, please use a biodegradable one. I love coffee, love getting a takeaway coffee. I don't always remember my Husky cup, but it's really painful to use a plastic one. So I love the idea of the I'm not paper cup that we're going to hear from Sav. And otherwise, if you can make those reusable options available, either a Husky cup or a returner or any of those ones, there are so many startups there to help you, and they're struggling right now as well. So if you can work together with those solution providers, that'd be great so that we don't get set back because of this pandemic.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks, Janet. Thanks. It's lovely to speak to you. Thanks for giving us your time, and stick around because we'll talk to you a bit later in the group discussion as well.
Great. Thanks, Jane.
We're now going to have a little chat with Dr. Adam Carr. So Dr. Adam Carr, what a great title you have. You are the resident coffee expert at 7 Miles Coffee Roasters. I can't wait to find out about this. Adam, you use your skills as a chemical engineer and your deep love of coffee to improve the understanding of coffee science and technology. Adam works at 7 Miles in their Coffee Science and Education Centre and designs experiments to test the latest and greatest coffee gear and how to brew the best coffee. Can you tell me about your research that you recently conducted about the cafe industry in Australia? It sounds really fascinating, and yeah, just dive in, tell us about it.
Okay. Well, I think, part of my role here at 7 Miles, as you just sort of outlined, is to look at the latest and greatest technology and gear. But I think across the last few years, we looked at a few diverging trends in machine manufacture, and we're noticing that basically kilo consumption in Australia is kind of flatlining. So some say we reached peak coffee at the beginning of 2020. Yeah. So we just thought, okay, what's going to happen in the next 5 years once we've reached that? And let's basically have a look at all the different trends across cafes, across roasteries, across consumer behaviors, and other trends, including sustainability trends. For example, we looked at reusable cup models and a few other different things just to sort of see where we thought the industry was going, and sort of refined it down to, I think, 3 major takeaway points. Sort of other things we think are categories to, well, I guess, trends to watch, keep your eye on, I think, to be sustainable in the future, because that's the idea. It's to create sustainable businesses, sustainable business models.
And so your top 3 trends that you uncovered, can you give us a little peek? Because I will let everyone know that the report is on your website, isn't it? So we can, we can send that out. But just to get a summary of the top 3 trends would be great.
Absolutely. So the top 3 trends really that we saw as accumulation of all the other, heaps of trends out there, were that we found that there's an increasing manufacture and adoption of automated technologies across the industry. When we say automated, not talking about robotic arms, although we actually have implemented a robotic arm for a very short period in our espresso window, which didn't work, by the way. So it's more of like, basically technology that facilitate consistency within the cafe that can, in theory, save both time and improve customer experience. We also found that a focus on craft and cuisine in cafes was particularly important. So, there's, a few different, you would call them dissociated points of data, kind of led us to think that, yeah, this is definitely something that people need to focus on. And maybe I'll elaborate in a little bit, but, and maybe people think that's obvious, but perhaps not so much, certainly not internationally. And I think finally, we looked at 2 different models we think two different models of coffee are going to emerge. And I think we've already seen it, and I think COVID's accelerated it. And that is looking at fast and slow coffee trends. So fast being rapidly made either through order or delivery, or actually direct interaction with the machine coffee that is ready within a minute. That's pretty key. The 7-Eleven model is a good example of that, although that's not what I think is the most sustainable model out there, but I guess no one from 7-Eleven's here. And then the slow coffee, which is kind of the coffee that we all know and love, and that is the sit-down experience, which is kind of cocooning you from the outside world. And sort of those two trends, either separately or together, will in fact define an element of sustainability in the future.
Great. And then we are going to we're going to get you back actually in our action summits later. So we are going to get you on board with some of the findings that you found in environmental sustainability. But from a personal perspective, out of the findings that you found out in there, which one was the one that, inspired you or made you feel excited in terms of what's coming up in coffee trends?
I mean, I'll be honest, it's a funny one. With all those things together, it almost leads to a separate key defining action, and that is driving exceptional customer experience. And, I'm part of our company's, purpose and core driver is to create exceptional customer experience. So but it's not just a tagline. I mean, all these trends packaged together are designed there to keep you sustainable. It's meant to be what's the right way of putting it? It's marking yourself as a key differentiating business in the current climate. We've reached peak coffee. There aren't many more people buying more coffees. It's now going to be a matter of, in terms of driving up your top line, let's be honest, a sustainable business, one of the key baseline things in there. I think most cafes will agree with me in saying it's very, very challenging to run a profitable business right now. Being able to integrate automated systems to drive efficiency and actually cause people, so for example, baristas' heads always facing the machines with heavy manual type systems. Using automated systems, you can now raise your head up and actually see above the machine to the customers that are around you. Driving engagement between baristas, the person making your coffee, and the person being served the coffee is going to be huge. And those technologies absolutely do that. We have a video where we looked at measuring the difference in literal face time between someone using these automated tools and not. And I think we had a 65% increase in eye-to-eye contact between the person serving the coffee versus, using these automated technologies. And I think being able to use these kinds of technologies will facilitate you being able to actually have deep, meaningful conversations and actually define who you are. Market distinction is huge, and whatever you believe in, whether it happens to be sustainability and you support fair trade organic coffee if that's a thing, or you support a coffee farm, or you have key energy saving measures, or you support cultural things outside of your own cafe. All those things have huge value, and being able to talk about that rather than literally pushing a few buttons on a machine, that's massive. And I think in terms of craft and cuisine, that will really show through. So, it's not only automation that does that. I mean, there are a few trends I suppose I haven't really gone into much more depth about, but I think that's key. Driving key customer experience across your entire business to actually shine in your community, to be, who you are in your community. I think that's where it's at. Great.
That is fantastic. I couldn't have asked you to write that better. So thank you for that. You're well briefed. So we're going to have to move on now. I could talk to you all day about this, but we'll bring you back and we can explore some more of these themes later on. So Jane, I'm going to pass back over to you and see who you're going to speak to next.
Fantastic. Well, Adam, what a great segue into our next speaker. We couldn't have picked somebody better to talk about creating a unique customer offering for their clients. So Hannah is the founder of the Moroccan Soup Bar. She opened her business 23 years ago in Melbourne, Fitzroy, and she opened it so she could give women of disadvantage an opportunity to work. She also wanted to open it to give Melburnians the best vegetarian Moroccan food around, and I can attest to it being exactly that. It's absolutely delicious. Hannah has had an interesting journey through COVID, and that's what we're going to talk to her about today and what she's done. But I think you'll really enjoy listening to her story and her very unique approach to running a cafe and doing exactly what Adam just said, is offering a unique customer experience. So hello, Hannah. How are you?
Hi, look, thank you. And certainly thank you to Joe and Responsible Cafes for this, I think, timely summit. because I think in a crisis, it's almost always an opportunity to innovate. So thank you for coming together and putting this on and inviting us to speak.
So tell us about the Moroccan Super and the values that drive the Moroccan Super.
Okay, and you're going to have to rein me in because I have a tendency to I love storytelling. And that is what the Moroccan Super is. It's a spoken menu. It was a business that was established around 23 years ago. And as you said, it was with a specific focus of offering women a pathway from disadvantage and crisis through to empowerment through employment, so that their opportunities for whatever it is that they wanted to do in life, they had options to make various decisions rather than remain stuck in the crisis or disadvantage. And we thought employment and an environment that enabled that would be absolutely amazing if we could establish that. Now, in our experience, women are conditioned in kitchens, and it is something we know how to do. And it sadly is also the source of our subjugation. So we wanted to flip that on its head and make it a source of enabling women. So the Moroccan Super was born, and women flocked to our doors and very quickly resonated with the community because it was unconventional. And it was a feel-good story, and a story that spoke to, I think, a sentiment of a community that was hungry for conversations around social justice, equity, responsibility, and all those things that don't have a lot of currency with governments and local councils, certainly not 23 years ago. So, fast forward 23 years and we found ourselves, obviously, we've grown not in a sense of physicality, but we've grown in a sense as an institution with a community that's gotten behind and resonated with this vision. And we've seen.
I was going to say, tell us about what happened during COVID, because that's an interesting story.
So because of the model of Moroccan Super, it is a place of autonomy and legitimacy for women. It wasn't just employment. And when the entire society shut down, I guess there was no instruction manual. We had no idea how to pivot, how to reimagine, how to be. And we were the recipients of, the best of human attributes in terms of generous communities that tried to support us, as well as the worst and in landlords who said pay or go. So ultimately, our main establishment, where we've been for 23 years, because of our business model, and we are hand to mouth and we reinvest back in community, we didn't have the financial scope to endure months of lockdown in paying landlords. So we left that building and decided to reimagine the Moroccan Super and a model of hospitality more fitting for our times, given what is happening around us, given COVID, given the health issues, given the need to reimagine how do we do hospitality more responsibly and not be defined and wait for instructions from governments and or from landlords and or from anybody else. So I guess for us, yes, we were, floundering probably for a day, trying to imagine how to reinvent. And then we came back to what our values are, and our values guided this new incarnation of the Moroccan Super. And what we decided was, based on our observation, that we would create themed dining spaces that engage our community with the social justice issues around those themes. So we created a garden room, which speaks to this very issue of environmental sustainability, and how we can all be better allies to First Nations people. Because for us, that's not a separate conversation. It's part and parcel of the foundation of the Moroccan Super. We've also created a women's room, and this is where we speak to the issues of celebrating the contribution of women, given that most of our staff are women, and that we are speaking to gender inequality, parity, and respect for the dignity of women. We created a kitchen where food for us should be about nutrition, and sadly it's become about Instagram shots and celebrity chefs. And so we wanted to reacquaint our community with food, nutrition, and understanding where stuff comes from, plant-based foods, etc. We also kind of went a little bit further in terms of our unconventionality and set up a boudoir or a bedroom. And for us, that was an important observation because it spoke to the social issues around intimacy that we have witnessed in the last year, because that is our currency. We read the environment that we're operating in and we respond to it in hospitality. So the last room, the boudoir, is about this issue of intimacy between men and women that has become so divisive as a social topic. So we simply ask people to come together and not wait for governments to regulate around these issues. Over dinner, we discuss, what does healthy intimacy look like for our times, where men and boys come together with women and girls and non-gender binary and reimagine, how do we define intimacy 2020 and beyond in a way that is outside of the destructive dynamic where men and boys have entitlement over women and girls' bodies, and women and girls reinforcing that message. So this is a new incarnation. Essentially, for me, it is a more responsible tread on how we do hospitality in a way that is more meaningful, and it is absolutely unconventional. There's nothing like it, and we hope that we offer it up yet again to our community who will resonate with this vision, with this new approach to being more responsible in the way in which we not only treat our staff, but we respond to our communities and provide food and hospitality.
I think for anybody who hasn't met Hannah or heard Hannah before, you might be thinking, are we actually speaking to a cafe person? We absolutely are. And it's an incredible place to go and eat dinner. So tell us a bit about how your customers, the fact that, what are they coming and eating, and what their response is to this whole new concept of, you're calling it a community cafe. What are you calling it, and how are they responding to it, Hannah?
So look, I do call it a community cafe, and I think the only thing we've changed in our relocation is our motto. Now our motto is Moroccan Super, Appetite for Change, because we are living in a world where, and I think I mentioned this earlier to Joe, that there was an incentive to talk about environmental sustainability and reusing and recycling, but with the advent of COVID, that's almost given way to simply businesses wanting to survive, and as a result, a lot of us have gone back to using single-use plastics to do takeaway, and between that and governments and local council, the conversation around environmental sustainability has fallen by the wayside in the name of economic recovery. Whereas for us at the Moroccan Super, we've simply strengthened this perspective of community and social responsibility. And we can showcase a way where we are enriched through that understanding, and we offer it up absolutely unapologetically, but our community comes back to lap it up tenfold. They are so hungry for it, and for a more meaningful conversation that is transparent and honest. So for us, social and environmental awareness sits alongside the social responsibility that we have as a business. We believe that we need to be aware not only of the lands onto which we stand, as the opening acknowledgement was, but we incorporate that into the very dishes that we serve up to community. We invite an engagement in conversations whilst we're serving up the best Moroccan vegetarian food in Melbourne. And people seem to, not only appreciate it, I really sense there's a palpable hunger for, businesses that are more responsible. People want to support values that resonate with who they are. And ultimately in all of this, for me, it's an investment in the next generation, because they are the solutions, and they need to see themselves in unconventional businesses who dare to take a stand outside of simply their own vested interests and just making money. And yes, we are still a sustainable business. We're financially, by any measure, by any criteria, a successful business. But we do it in such a way that our success is also measured in our commitment to and walking the path of social justice, caring for our staff and responding to the needs of our communities.
Hannah, that was fantastic. I think people can probably understand when we were putting this together, I knew exactly who to get to be a keynote speaker representing cafes today, because I've seen the way that you have pivoted through the really challenging times of COVID. And I think you just give such a unique perspective. I think you're an inspiration. So thanks for that. We'll hear from you again in the group discussion, but that was a really great synopsis of who you are and what drives you and the Moroccan Soup Bar and how it's become how it is very successful. So thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.
Jo, over to you.
Yeah, Hannah, that was fantastic. And a brilliant segue into an interview that I conducted yesterday with the amazing Sarah Wilson, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. But Sarah's been a really long-standing ambassador and passionate advocate for the Responsible Cafes movement. And you may know her for her amazing line of books, including I Quit Sugar, and more recently, this One Wild and Precious Life, where we get an insight into the personal journey that Sarah's been on to reduce her impact and really just lead a more meaningful life. So she isn't scared, just like you, Hannah, to take on big and hairy subjects, which is why we absolutely love her. And we wanted to include her in our summit today to just give you that passionate customer perspective. So the people that Hannah are talking about, I think, Hannah, you'll really love this because it is going to endorse what you're thinking that your customers want. So here's Sarah having a chat with me. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us today. I know you love a good cup of coffee and are very passionate about our environment, which we really thank you for. I recently listened to your new podcast, which everyone, great listening, by the way. And you were speaking to the lovely David Pocock, a rugby player who quit at the height of his profession to dedicate his life to climate activism. Mm-hmm. And you discussed the term moral courage. Can you give me your thoughts on what that is and why you think it's so important right now?
Oh gosh, that's a big theme, but it is absolutely critical right now. I think a lot of us are sitting around thinking that somebody's going to come and save us. We see what's happening with plastics in the ocean. We're seeing what's happening with climate change. We are very, very legitimately scared and worried and concerned about the future. But we're all sitting around thinking that somebody else is going to do the work to fix the situation. And essentially, we're going to have to do it ourselves. So moral courage is essentially about seeing that life is asking us to step up right now. So over the last 30 years, it's been awfully comfortable, especially in Australia. We have had uninterrupted economic growth. And so we are used to having a life of comfort, and we are adverse to the idea of discomfort, especially if it means discomfort that's of sacrifice to the greater good. So individualism has just run rampant. So when we're presented with the idea of doing something for the greater good, we get actually angry. We get righteous about it. Like, why should we? And for some, it's like the face mask scenario, or it's the takeaway coffee cup scenario. Well, why should I have to do something? I like my coffee in a container with a little plastic sippy cup, sort of thing going on. I mean, this is, as an aside, I find it very interesting that people need a little kind of lip on their cup. And, I see these grown adults walking around as though they're little children drinking their sweetened, milky drink from what looks like a child's sippy cup. But anyway, so I feel that to actually do what needs to be done, we actually have to step into almost like a sort of a stoic, almost warrior-like, sort of do what it takes mentality. And that is something that we're not used to in this culture. But what I talk about is trying to sell in the virtue of being virtuous, the virtue of stepping up and going to our edge, of putting in the work, of getting uncomfortable in order to have a meaningful life, a life that actually might last longer than the 80 years that some people are saying we have left on the planet as a human species. So it's something that it's not necessarily about horribleness and having a really grim life. In fact, moral courage has always been something that has led to intrinsic value, joy, a very deep joy for people. So that's what David and I were talking about, because he very much lives by that. And he lives it in a very masculine way. And as you know, Joe, we need male role models in this space more than ever. And if we pivot it back to the takeaway coffee cup issue, I'm often saying to men in the streets, we need to see more of you with a keep cup.
Yeah.
We need to see male role models making it look cool. And then I do the sippy cup thing and try to make them feel really ashamed about walking around with a cup with a lip on it. Anyway, so yes, I think this is something we need to rise to, and we need to make it appealing and virtuous and a way of being that we all want to be part of, rather than something that's just for the activists.
So what we're talking about in this summit is about reimagining the future of cafe culture, because it's going to take a lot of imagination, like you've just kind of touched on. These small businesses can be great catalysts for community impact. And as a responsible consumer yourself, what would you like to see as part of that reimagination?
I'd like to see cafe owners actually, especially sort of cafe owners where they've got a really big following, you know, where they're kind of cool and people look to them for cues on food trends, on even coffee trends and so on. I'd like to see some of those big operators go first. You know, if we're talking moral courage, it's often about going first, and it's horribly discomforting. However, it often leads to incredible rewards, including a loyalty, I think. We are looking for new heroes. We're looking for people that put a stake in the ground and going, this is how life should be done. So I would love to see cafe owners band together around Bondi or wherever they may be in the world and say, right, we're going to ban disposable single-use coffee cups in our cafe. That's essentially what needs to happen, because at the moment they're too scared to, because they're scared that then their customers will go elsewhere. But if a group get together and they're the coolest cafes on the block, then it'll start to normalize. People will get used to it, and there's a way to do it. You communicate it, you talk about it, you share the messages on Instagram,
and you're proud of it. You know, you make it part of your proposition. Yeah. That's right.
And that's what is required right now. I get it that these cafe owners are scared they'll lose customers, but they'll also gain them. And, you know, I'll put my hand up. If anyone's prepared to do it, I will promote it and I will drive my community, for whatever it's worth, to those cafes, because we are looking for brave operators. We're looking for the morally courageous. I mean, that's a true influencer. So, I mean, I think councils can make it easier. I think state governments can make it easier by maybe doing a week or a month where takeaway coffee cups are banned. I mean, we do need structures in place to make it easier for people to do the right thing. But what, you know, the other thing you can do is perhaps add $1 for a takeaway coffee cup. 20 cents isn't going to cut it. 50 cents ain't going to cut it. Add $1, add $2, at least get some of the millennials who might be on a budget to think about this twice, and then say that money is going to go to a charity, whether it's a plastic-free charity or whatever it might be, so that it's all very generous and charitable and it's all geared towards moving forward. But that's the kind of thing that people could be doing. And there are people like us, there's people in the community who will support them, who will make this initiative work. So we need to see more bravery, more moral courage. And I get it, it's hard when you're a small business operator, but I think the uptick on it could be stupendous.
Yeah.
And there's people here waiting for it. We will support that kind of initiative. And even people who get the takeaway coffee cup, they'll be relieved to be forced into this position. And this is what I explore in my book, This One Wild and Precious Life, is that we are looking for examples of positive change, and we will grasp onto it and we'll want to join that movement, because care begets care. We want that aspect of our human nature to be kind of brought forward, and we often don't do ourselves the favour of doing it of our own accord. We need to have levers in place that will do that. Now, if you're a cafe owner who can do that, great. A council, I mean, honestly, it needs to be done.
Well, Sarah, I really appreciate you for all the work that you're doing in this space. It definitely makes me feel like there are voices out there which are supporting what we do. So I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time today. I hope you get down to the beach and, you know, with your reusable cup and start abusing people in the streets. It's a great
I
one.
did it this morning, don't worry. It was a TV host, but I won't mention his name, but I gave him a hard time. Took the opportunity. So yes, good luck everybody, and please, I will support anyone who wants to go first.
Thanks.
See you,
Sam.
Joe.
So that was an interesting video interview, Joe, and I think we had 3 call outs then. The first was to Cup blokes, and we've got two Cup blokes about to talk on our panel, which is Michael from Husky Cup and Sav from I Am Not Paper. So they're definitely Cup blokes. Another one is that, you know, Sarah said that she would support any cafe that was to, you know, really move themselves onto the responsible journey pathway. And she's got hundreds of thousands of followers. So I think that that's a pretty good incentive, if not everything else that we're talking about, but that's pretty cool. But she also, you know, looked for and asked for cafe heroes. And the next thing we want to show you is just a little snippet of cafe case studies that Joe and I have been going around and talking to different cafes in Melbourne and in Sydney, and there's one in Perth as well, just to show you some of the people we're meeting. And some of these people are just fantastic. You know, they really are passionate about what they're doing, and they're doing so many diverse different things. So let me just show you now that video so you get a sense of that.
You don't have to be a social enterprise to have a social impact. I think that's a really important thing.
The idea of giving away plastic stuff for free that will end up eventually in the oceans.
As part of our sustainability mission.
Reusable coffee cups that we sell, and we offer a discount if people bring any sort of reusable coffee cup.
It's not an option, it's simply what responsibility means. It's a manifestation of responsibility.
That at the heart of every single decision we make, people and planet are at the forefront.
Just to my left over here is Honey Lane Farm, and we probably get maybe 70-80% of our veg from there.
What's driven us to do this cafe is our own passion for looking after our earth and for doing the best we possibly can with the purest possible food.
So there are some of our cafe examples, and we've started to put them up now. We've created a series called Cafes That Are Killing It. They're going up on our website so you can watch them, which is great. But we're now going to have our panel discussion. So can I ask all our guests to turn their microphone and cameras back on, and we'll have a bit of a discussion. So we've got our original speakers. We've got Hannah, we've got Adam, and we have Janet, but we've also got some new speakers. We've got Michael from Husky Cup. Michael, give a wave. He's here. We've got Sav from I Am Not Paper.
Hi, guys.
And we've got Rachel from the Alternative Dairy Company.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. This is great to have you all here. And we've got Joe, you're going to be on the panel too. We'll see how we go. We've sort of got a bit of time, but let's see how we go. So I suppose the first question is, and let's start with some of our new people, perhaps. What about, you know, Michael, what's your vision of a responsible cafe? Where do you think we're going? Where can we go with this vision that we have of reimagining responsible cafes?
Well, I think the ways in which you can be a responsible cafe is definitely widened. You know, when responsible cafes were started, however many years ago, it was about that reusable cup and trying to make that the norm. And now it's more about, you know, the other things that cafes can do. It's about your supply chain. It's about what are you doing with your waste? What options are you providing for your cafes? It's a complicated space. Things are changing. Cafe owners are often frustrated by buying compostable cups and then realizing that they're not being disposed of properly when they thought that it was, varying different information. So I think cafes are trying, but I think the information can be a bit confusing. But just seeing cafes trying these things, seeing zero waste cafes pop up in Sydney, seeing people starting to charge a latte levy, to seeing people having a variety of reusable cups on offer and introducing swap systems so that they're reusing before having to recycle.
Fantastic. Sav, I suppose I ask you the same question. What do you think what's your vision of a responsible cafe now?
It's a great question. I think it's, I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer it. I think it's the best sort of answer I can give is from the takeaways from the great panel that we had today. Just Janet talking about leading and setting a standard out there from the UN. I think that's massive, and I think a cafe should ask the questions, see what's out there, and actually set a standard and provide, solutions that do exist out there. I think that's one part. Dr. Adam from 7 Miles Roasters said a really good point. By the way, I'd love to try your re-engineered coffee. Engagement is massive. And he said engaging with the baristas. I think if a supplier or industry, whether it's food, packaging, engaging with the cafes themselves and communicating what they can do to provide the cafe with, engagement materials to, offset to their customers. So engagement with the baristas is a big call. Hannah from the Moroccan Soup Bar, love your name, by the way. That's awesome. I think doing good is a massive one. I mean, doing good and let everybody know, working with diverse people, and pretty much being very, very passionate about it and having fun. So I think that's my takeaway is just, do a lot of research, ask the questions, what exists out there with suppliers, press and push the boundaries and take it in and change and actually and do it. Actually just do it and it will actually work, and then just actually advertise that, create awareness to your consumers, to the general public, to your staff, and reach a common goal, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So Adam, how can your organization help cafes on the responsible business journey? What could you help them with?
I mean, it's one of the privileged parts, I suppose, of being a roaster, that we're caught, like we're almost this funnel point of getting everything that exists, supplying coffee, to cafes, and then being able to sort of filter out that stuff to our cafes. I mean, we try and do as good a job as possible of trying to inform our cafe partners and actually generally as to what things they can do to make a difference. And we try and provide solutions for that. But in all truth, it's a funny one, right? I think, there's been a bit of talk here about, being able to sort of talk to your suppliers about the kind of solutions that you could, implement for them. And I think as a roastery, we don't hear a lot in terms of, particularly in this space, particularly in the sustainability space. I mean, I would love to have someone come up to me and say, I'd like to explore the option of eliminating my paper cups. We actually have data that shows, we actually asked, we have an espresso window, we asked people, would you come back if we eliminated paper cups? And now the other thing is also to say what people say on that kind of a survey versus what they actually do when you implement it. That can be two different things, but at the same time, like, we've got data and we've got the capacity, we've got the center that I run. We're here, we exist to be able to try and answer the questions, try and help get a solution for you to actually launch. So I'm seeing the participants here, if you have questions, you've got a thing you want to experiment, there's ways we can help support that.
That's fantastic.
Why not? I mean, ask the question. We're here. We want to help.
That's great. Well, that's sort of why we have you on this panel and in part of the summit too. Because when I came across, I call you Dr. Coffee. When I came across Dr. Coffee and his report, I just thought it was extraordinary. No. So I suppose the next question is, how can we, and I'll put this to you, Rachel, how can we work together as an industry to sort of help cafes on their responsible business journey?
Yeah, it's sincerely summits like this one. It's really linking arms and leaning in and having conversations, because we do know that we are stronger together. It's sharing tips. It's being the advocate. It's starting or continuing conversations in each of our individual businesses. It's kindly keeping each other accountable. And one of the most important things is to really celebrate each other's small wins along the journey.
Fantastic. That's good. All right, I'm going to put to all of you, you've got less than 1 minute, your top tip to become a responsible cafe. And I'll start with Janet. Less than 1 minute, please. Keep it tight. Janet, your top tip for cafes to be a responsible cafe. What is it?
Design out waste, whether you're donating to Oz Harvest or you're switching to compostable cups, or ideally going to the reusable ones. And make it easy for your customers. Don't make them feel weird. Maybe discount all your coffees by 10% and then just charge 10 cents, and then just charge the ones that need that takeaway cup that extra 10 cents, instead of giving the discount for the people who do the right thing. Maybe just set the bar as that being the norm, and then charge the people who are still using those kids' sippy cups, as Sarah Wilson says.
Okay. Sav, 1 minute. Your top tip to become a responsible.
Okay, if you need to use a disposable cup, choose a cup that's not made from trees, no deforestation, definitely a plastic-free lid, and have fun with it, I guess. Yeah.
Good answer. Hannah, your top tip, less than 1 minute for you.
Oh gosh, you need to tell me. So these are, in terms of takeaway, swap and go containers. They're made of rice husks. It's an investment that we've put in that enables people to not feel weird. I'm somebody who ultimately thinks if we don't, who will? And now is the time in this crisis to innovate. And if you build it, they will come. So I think I take up Sarah Wilson's moral courage. And this is our time. So it's not about one thing. It is about adopting a perspective and coming together as allies in the cafe industry. This is our time, and our time to really showcase how we can be responsible. So I'm actually quite excited about these times.
Good on you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Adam?
Oh man, I'll use 1 minute to try and get 3 points. First thing, turn your machine off at night. That'll basically eliminate as many carbon emissions as it would do eliminating all your paper cups in the entire cafe across an entire year. So that's quite significant. I would say think about an automated milk delivery system to eliminate milk waste. It'll do better for your wallet, and it most certainly will do better for your environment. You can reduce your wastage by, God, a factor of 5 by doing so. And I would echo Janet's sentiment, reduce your waste. I mean, those are the top 3 emitters that we found in a cafe from our life cycle analysis. They're very, very simple to do, very easy to implement, and they're all good for the economic bottom line. They're all good for the environmental bottom line. And honestly, I mean, I couldn't recommend better things than that right now.
Great. Okay. Michael?
Normalise reuse and take a stand on single use. I think the best way that a cafe can take a stand on single use is offering options, whether that be reusable cups, whether it be a latte levy, whether it be a swap system, giving those customers options and taking a stand. And if they really believe in the authenticity of that voice to say, yeah, we don't want to be doing this, then they'll go on the journey with you.
Great. Rachel?
Actually, just echoing the options, that milk is great, but there's some fantastic plant milk options as well that don't compromise on taste or performance.
And Jo, you have the last word.
Yay! Okay, so my one is, if we're plugging away, is to get onto the Responsible Cafe's website if you're a cafe and log into your, you can set up an account, and then you can tick off all the amazing actions that you're taking and get rated as from a 1 bean cafe to a gold bean cafe. And then we've got beautiful conscious consumers who search our map on a daily basis. We have thousands of people on our website, and they can find you. So start telling people about the great things that you're doing. There you go.
Fantastic. All right. Give me a few more minutes, everybody. We want to finish off here to tell you what's coming. So that's been a fantastic summit. I suppose the whole reason for coming together is that it's been such a tumultuous time of late that we thought that we really needed to support our network and the broader cafe industry by bringing together some really inspiring speakers, which I think you'll see that we have, and coming together to discuss some issues, you know. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Our ultimate objective now is that we think now more than ever, it's time for everybody to get on the responsible business journey. You know, the cafes that are part of our network, we encourage them to do more, to come together and to really take action. Our vision is that we create a connected network that are responsible and profitable cafes, and that they lead their communities towards a regenerative future. So to this end, we've actually got some more summits planned. We're planning to do 4 more action summits every Tuesday this month at the same time, 3:30. And the whole idea is to really give you some information that's very practical and actionable. Today was about inspiration, was about hearing from a global perspective, an industry's perspective, a cafe innovator, but as well as a personal perspective. And these action summits are very much around giving you some more information to help you on your business journey. The first thing we want to do is introduce to you new ways of thinking. So we want to introduce ideas of circular economy and closed loop systems. And we have some great speakers next week who are going to talk about that in circular economy thinking. We have Sav, you met Sav today. He's a design thinker, and he's a really great, got some fantastic ideas about how to design different products, particularly for cafes, to really design out waste and to make more sustainable products. We've also got zero waste thinking. And all the way along the way, we'll be hearing from cafes who are doing various activities in this area. So as well as a new way of thinking, we want to introduce these new ways of doing. And we're introducing these under 5 action themes: purpose, performance, procurement, planet, and people. And this is our framework around which you can start to take action to make your cafe more responsible, more sustainable. All of them are such huge topics. So we're going to dive much deeper. We've got some wonderful cafe experts to tell us what they've been doing and how they've been doing it. We've got some great industry experts around all those different themes. So I think you'll really enjoy that too. We're also going to talk about new ways of engaging. So once you start to really get on your responsible business journey, we're going to help you each step in each action summit. We've created a playbook, and we're going to give you one part of that playbook each week so that you can start to action the different themes within your cafe. We're also encouraging you to track your impact. So we already have the cafe bean rating as part of the Responsible Cafe Network. And if you're a responsible cafe, you know how you log into your dashboard and you go into the checklist and you check off what we're doing. We really want to emphasize this and make this a stronger tool for you to use. We also want to use it as a collective tool for the whole network so that we can start to report on what we're doing. And I suppose we could start to address what Janet said at the beginning, is how do we come together as a industry and feed information back up to whether it's the UN, a global organization, or our councils or whatever it is. And this is a real opportunity for us to do that through the Responsible Cafe Network, through our dashboard that already exists, and through all the functionality that's on our website. We also want to help you share your cafe story. We've got some, in the last summit, we've got some terrific marketing gurus who are going to help you tell your story, to how to use social media, to how to get your customers on board, your community. I think you'll really love that. And I suppose all the way along in these 4 summits, we're going to invite you to share your insights and innovations, because we really want to hear from you. You've had a few members of our summit panel today say that they're interested to hear what your questions are, what your concerns are, what your challenges are, so that as we can come together as industry and discuss them, solve them, think of new ideas, think of innovations. I think amongst us all, we can definitely come up with some ideas of how to solve some of these challenges that we were speaking of. So that is the end. And I suppose we're going to post this webinar on our website so that you can catch up with it there. We're already posting it. The cafes that are killing it, case studies, and we'll put a few more of them there. But what we'll do is, if Laura hasn't already done it, I'll get her to put I've got a feedback form we'd love you to fill in, because we'd love to know what you'd like to hear from going forward in our summits. If there's any particular burning issue you've got, if there's any question you'd like to ask one of our panel members, some of them will be joining us again on the last summit, so they can answer it then, if not along the way, because they'll also be joining us at other times. So we really want to get you involved. We really want to hear what you've got to say. We're open to your ideas, we're open to innovations. And that's it. That's it from me. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I will see if, let's see, Laura has put the link in the chat. I'll also get Joe to send it out to you in some after summit communication. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found it interesting. Joe, I don't know if you want to have a last word here.
No, just love you all. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about the next 4 summits. And thank you, Jane. You've done an amazing job at bringing everything together. So let's do it.